and welcome to Season 4 of Rising Stories Podcast. I'm Corine Sandifer, your host. Before we begin, I want to share that today's podcast is sponsored by Audible. I listen to audiobooks all the time, every day just about, and with over 470,000 audio titles, plus all the bestsellers you can think of, you also get hassle-free exchanges, which I love. If you don't like a book, you can exchange it for another one without losing your credits. Today, Audible is offering you this great deal. This month, get one free audiobook plus 2 free Audible originals and a 30-day free trial when you text Rising Stories to 500-500. Or you can also click on the link in the show notes below to take advantage of this offer. Join me in the challenge that I've made for myself of listening to 20 books this year. I think, though, that we might have exceeded that since our quarantine. But anyway, check out Audible. As some of you know, I am the regional leader for Lean In Tennessee, and it is part of the Sheryl Sandberg, Dave Goldberg Family Foundation, including Lean In and Option B. In my journey of being a Lean In Circle leader and regional leader, I have met countless women and men who are changing the world by empowering women to break that glass ceiling and to take on new challenges and also move the needle towards gender equality in the workplace. So for Season 4, I'm bringing you interviews with some of the most powerful women running these Lean In circles across the globe. So today, my guest is Melissa Romero, co-founder and leader of Lean In Netherlands. Melissa is a senior international business leader and former senior brand manager for Gillette for Procter & Gamble. She is a gem, and I can't wait for you to hear her story. I think she and I are somehow related because she bears the same last name as my mother's maiden name. So I'm really excited for you to hear her story. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Corine. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining me. So, what time is it in the Netherlands?
So right now is 5:15 in the afternoon.
Okay, not so bad. So you guys are ahead of us about 5 or 6 hours, or no, maybe like 7 or 8 hours.
Yes, something like that. I think 7 hours versus Tennessee, yes.
What do you like best about living in the Netherlands?
Well, it's a tiny country in the sense that you can start driving out of any given point for, I think in about 3 hours you would leave the country in any direction. Wow. So it's very small, but it also feels, like a big city in terms of Amsterdam, where I live. It's very cosmopolitan. There's a lot of international people over here, but in a very tiny kind of physical area. So it's like a small town feeling, but also a big city life in a way.
That is nice. So do you live like in the city part, or do you live more like in a countryside part?
Definitely. I live in the center of Amsterdam, which is the capital, but there is also a lot of nature in the Netherlands in general. So it's a small country, but there is also a lot of gems here when it comes to dams and valleys. Obviously, we don't have any mountains whatsoever, but also, a lot of beaches, some islands. So it's really,
nice.
Really beautiful country.
I do plan to visit. I had started a plan to vacation there for a few days as a part of a kind of a bit of a Europe tour, but
that's amazing.
With all of this that happened with people will listen post-COVID, but all of this is just kind of put on hold on things. So, but I still plan to be there sometime soon.
I hope you're going to be able to come as soon as possible, because it's really beautiful. I will be, delighted to show you around and be your guide for your time in Holland.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. So tell me your background and where you originated from. And I want to hear how you learned 5 languages.
Yes, absolutely. So I am Colombian, born and raised 100%. And at the age of 17, unfortunately, obviously Colombia in the 90s, early 2000s was a very different country than what it is today, quite dangerous. And unfortunately, my family was forced to leave quite abruptly. When I was 17, my parents immigrated to the United States with my little brother, who's 10 years younger. And, for things of life, I couldn't join them. So I ended up staying behind, waiting for paperwork and whatnot. And what we thought was going to be a 6 months separation became a 7-year separation. So eventually, I was a 17-year-old. I was already in university and I needed to mature very, very fast. And by the time where I graduated from university at the age of 20, at that point I figured out, okay, this is not happening. I'm not reuniting with my family, so I will take kind of my destiny in my own hands, and I decided to come to Europe. So I saved up some money on the side, and I made a plan, and I ended up coming to Europe. And I first landed in Italy because I had been studying my whole life in an international school, in an Italian school. So that's actually answering your second question. So my second mother language, if you will, is Italian. I grew up kind of learning to write and read at the same time in both languages, but I had never been to Italy until I was 20. So I decided, it makes sense. I'm going to go to Italy and say what I have been brainwashed with for over, 15 years or so. So I ended up going to Italy first, and I have this huge passion for languages. So eventually, after I traveled a little bit in the country, I really wanted to learn another language. So I ended up going to France, and there I lived for about 2.5 years. And I learned French, and I also, ended up studying an extra master's because I am an industrial engineer by education, but I wanted to, eventually branch out into business, which is what I did. So I did a master's in business in France, and, eventually that took me to work for Volvo, and I did that with them. I joined what they call a traineeship program. So I ended up moving to Brussels with them, and I spent some time in Sweden, and eventually also with them, I went to Asheville, not Nashville, but Asheville, North Carolina. So I had the big pleasure to live there for a couple of months, and that was the time where I reunited with my family. So that was in 2009. So we celebrated last year 10-year reunion. So eventually, after my time in Asheville, I came back to my work in Brussels. And at that time, there was an opportunity that came up. I really wanted to work in brand management. I discovered that and in one of my rotations at Volvo. And there was an opportunity that came up with Procter & Gamble, but it was for a job in the Netherlands, and I was living in Brussels at the time. So, I say, why not? And I ended up coming to this beautiful country exactly 10 years ago. So in April 10th, I celebrated my 10th anniversary of being here in the Netherlands.
Yeah. And you were talking to me earlier about taking that chance and taking a beginner's role. Was that for Procter & Gamble?
Absolutely. So I had been working already for a couple of years prior to graduating back in Colombia, and then later on in France and in Brussels with Volvo. But as I say, I discovered I really wanted to do brand management. So one of my mentors talked about this opportunity. Hey, Procter & Gamble is maybe something that fits your profile and your skills. And I actually ended up applying to P&G more to put pressure on Volvo so that they would give me the brand manager role that I wanted. But it ended up being the crisis, so they didn't want to move me. I would have needed to move full time to Sweden. And eventually, I say, okay, I'll go for P&G because I really want to do this. P&G is the company who invented basically brand management, so it was a great school. But P&G recruits recent graduates, so people just coming out of university, so people younger than me on average than what I was, and with no previous working experience. I decided basically to start in a beginner's role because I knew that, first of all, I wanted to learn the skills, and second of all, I knew this was where I wanted to potentially build a career, and I mean, so much so that I spent 10 years with them. But that also comes with the salary of a beginner's, right? So that was the first time in my life and in my career where I needed to, set foot on the
Negotiate.
ground and negotiate and say, hey guys, for as much as I really want this, I already have a salary of a person with a little bit more experience, and I understand you have kind of fixed norms for what salaries you give beginners, but
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm worth more than a beginner's role. So luckily, we found common ground, and I was able to take the offer and move to Rotterdam at the time for P&G. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. And being in career management, so I do a lot of coaching with executives on during their transition time and their career boosting and things like that, kind of upping their game. I'm just fascinated by, a lot of times I will come across a client who wants to totally change industries and totally
Mm.
change into a different line of work. Partly what they've done before, but maybe there's something new or a different branch or some type of maybe altogether industry.
Yeah.
But I always just say, because they look at things and they're like, well, I'm not going to apply for that, or I'm not going to get that, or I'm not going to even talk to anybody because it is a beginner's role, or it is they're looking for this, or it's a less salary. When in fact, I feel like all it takes is a dialogue sometimes
Yes,
to
absolutely.
dialogue, right? And to make that transition. And of course, it's a give and take on both sides. It's a give and take for each, the candidate as well as the company to make that transition work. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're so right. And then at the end, also we all have so many transferable skills that sometimes we are more fixed ourselves on, this industry or that other industry. And if you are selfish, actually, you are just borrowing or lending your transferable skills in exchange for a new learning curve for yourself. So I well, we were talking just before we started about, what I'm up to right now, and I am just about to start on at a tech startup incubator. So I'm gonna enter I'm an engineer, from working really with big yellow machines in the construction equipment branch of
yeah.
Volvo, moving into FMCG. Now, it's very scary and exciting because I'm starting, I'm gonna enter the world of tech. And again, at the beginning, I
Wow.
thought like, so many people were telling me like, why don't you should, just leave corporate, start something, become a founder. We need more female founders. And I was like, yeah, but I don't think, I don't have that entrepreneurial kick or so. But actually, the more you think about it, the more the skills that I have built throughout my career are very much needed, because a lot of people that are good in, the techie aspects of it do not per se know how to run a business, which is what I have been bred, to do in the last decade of career.
So important to have seasoned people on the bus. Put when I'm talking with people who are starting businesses and things and startups, I'm like, who's on your bus? Because like,
Yeah.
who's got a good seat on your bus? Because you've got to have those seasoned people that have seen the market, have seen what's going on. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about your Lean In circles there in the Netherlands and how you guys got started. I know you're a co-founder,
Yes.
and how did that happen?
Yes. So I think like many of us, I ended up reading the book. I remember I was taking a plane, was about 5, 6 years ago. I just needed a book to fall asleep to. And I had forgotten my book at home. So I was running through the airport. And, in shopper psychology, we say that, faces talk, faces sell. So it was
Yes.
exactly the case. Cheryl's book was the only one that had a face on the cover. She seemed like a nice lady. I had no clue who Sheryl Sandberg was. And I just, grabbed the book, and I could not put it down throughout my 8-hour flight because it resonated with me in so many ways. And I was recently also listening to your podcast that you did with our friend Melody. And it was exactly, the same for me, where I realized like, oh, wow, I can also do this in a different way, where I took certain things for granted, where I thought like, okay, this is how ladies behave, or like you
Yeah.
try to be so nice, but actually you're not doing yourself a favor, and you can be still authentic and ask for your right, for your worth. So at that point in time, I loved the fact that the book was very much data based. So I'm very, as an engineer by education, I really am very focused on on the numbers, and I love that there was a lot of research. And the second thing I loved was the call to action with circles, because sometimes, how many times do you read a book? And I know you're reading 20 books now these days, and actually it's nice. You have so many insights, and then what? There's no call to action, there's no follow up. So I really love that invitation to, okay, just join a leaning circle or start your own circle. So at that time in the Netherlands, I think there were only two circles, and one was something that was for moms or something, and the other one was women in tech. And at the time, I was not a woman in tech yet, and I am not a mom yet. So I thought, why not? I'm going to start my own circle, and that circle is called Amsterdam Internationals. And like many other circles from our fellow regional leaders, it just became something massive, so big that right now we're trying to create smaller circles out of that one big circle, because we really want to give people the opportunity to have these, very intimate connections in smaller groups every month. So eventually I joined forces with other circle leaders, let's say here in the Netherlands. Some of them started reaching out to me like, hey, you have a big circle, let's join forces, let's do something together, like let's organize a get together or a drinks or something like that. And then we say, yeah, but why drinks? We're a little bit allergic to these networking drinks. We say, hey, if our values are learning, growing, and taking action, why don't we do something bigger? And then we dream big and we say, let's set up a conference. And all of a sudden,
nice.
This became from just, hey, let's get together. This became us entering the regional leaders program that you are also part of. And right now we have grown so much. We have about 1,000 members here in the Netherlands, about 44 circles and counting in our leadership team. Circles is one of our key priorities. So apart from having an head of events, we also have a head of circles development, and we do events that are called Circles Factory, where we invite people that are curious or that have never experienced the power of the circle to come for a kind of a pilot session and then start their own circle from there or join another circle. So that's kind of my story, and it's been, a couple of years since we joined the regional leaders program. It's going to be almost 3, and it's been, a great experience of growth, of pleasure. We have about 35 volunteers now in our network. We have a leadership team of 9 members, and our community is growing, and we're doing so many things that between just getting started and now. And I still have my circle that I join, every month. And during these times of COVID, we are trying to meet every week. I still need that connection and that, skill building and action commitment every single time we meet. I think everybody really appreciates that. So it's been great. That's been my second hat for these couple of years, and I hope it's going to stay like that for many more to come.
I love that, and they're so lucky to have you, because I know you've got a lot to give as well. What's some of the things that the women or the men and women or your circles, what are some things that kind of stand out that are not necessarily issues, but things that you all are kind of approaching and working on, maybe some initiatives?
Yeah, it's very nice that you ask, because indeed what we have tried to do, and obviously leaning globally, we all stand for advancing women, right? And advancing women and allowing us to be unapologetically ambitious. What we have tried to do is also to give a twist to a more local, relevant touch, and we have defined our own local mission as helping reshape the new definition of leadership. We are very intentional also into bringing men into the conversation, and we believe that until we redefine leadership for a more inclusive type, a more compassionate type, listening type. So obviously all the traits that we typically recognize as a good leader are sometimes hyper masculine. I'm not saying that they are bad, and me myself, I have a lot of very masculine leadership traits, but I believe that there is room in that traditional definition of leadership to include compassion and listening and understanding and so many other more let's say, soft traits. You have seen it recently also with, the leaders in the world, and Jacinda Ardern and all these wonderful women that are leading countries that are already much ahead than many others in terms of the COVID fight.
Mm-hmm.
So what we try to do here is really focusing on that. What is the new definition of leadership? How do we make sure that we can be 100% ourselves and still make it to the top ranks of whatever it is that we want to do? Not everybody wants to be a CEO, but if you are willing to become, I don't know, a baker, how can you make sure that you being 100% yourselves can make it to the highest point of being a baker that you want to reach? So that's a lot of the topics that we discuss in our circles. We also have started these kind of webinars especially with the network, and we recently had V's, our leading sister, V's Bratsby from Switzerland,
Mm-hmm.
sharing with us some important points on negotiation. We will soon have another one about financial literacy and how can you start investing in the stock exchange. A lot of women are scared of that. 80% of investors in the world are men. So we're trying to give our community these kind of tools to be financially independent, and also to lead authentically from the heart, and also make that a role model.
I think that is great. And I just, Melissa, I hear you, and I'm just like, I want to know what your secret sauce is. Like, and I want to know, because I feel like you have got this innate, kind of a strong presence. And I'm wanting to know, what was it and I feel like it started back when you maybe left Colombia and started going to all these different countries. What was it that was driving you to excellence and to really push your career and get into that? Is there like a word that you think about, or something that kind of carried you through?
Yeah, well, the word that I can think about is determination. That's something that I have had, but I think it has to do, or there is no such thing as a secret sauce. I think we are built of good things and bad things. I owe my parents, a beautiful childhood with a great example of two really hardworking people. They still are working. It's not easy when you have everything to immigrate to the U.S., start from scratch, and
Mm-hmm.
with a little one, and start working in jobs where it's very far from what they used to do, not
Right.
speaking the language, etc. And so I owe them a lot from that, but also from that painful separation. It also came this kind of drive of I know if I can sit down and cry and then end up in the drugs or whatever, or I can just fix this and make it a good outcome for me and also for my family. And it has proven to help us all, because eventually when I graduated and when I started making a career, I could also help back. My brother also had that great example. He ended up winning a scholarship to study, full scholarship, for the full 4 years of studies at Columbia University in New York. So he,
Nice.
graduated Ivy League with no debt, and it's a beautiful, I think, a
Wow.
family story of accomplishment, but it is not without the pain and the trauma. So I think there is no secret sauce. It's just you just need to go
Mm-hmm.
through the ups and downs and make sure that you pick yourself together, and know that there is a possible better future out there for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well done. I think you've been awesome, and I can't wait to see what happens in the next 10 years for you
Thank
too.
you. Yeah, me neither.
Yeah. So let's talk about something fun. I ask a couple of questions. One is, what was the best business advice you ever received?
Yes. Yeah, and that was at the time, my manager, I have been a perfectionist, which is not a good thing, by the way, but for such a long time. And I used to get things very seriously, and we needed to write these reports, and sometimes you make a mistake or whatnot, and I took it very seriously. Like, I took it home and I felt very bad. I was at that time a junior at P&G. I was not even probably a year in the job or something, and I remember that he told me, you know what? Like, he knew what my qualities were. He knew that that was just a human mistake, and he said, don't take it so seriously. It's just soap. At that time, I was responsible for the dish care business, and he was like, at the end of the day, it's just soap. And he was so right. From there, I forgot about it when I was in stressful parts of my career. But every time, if I remember that, it's just soap, or it's just shampoo, or it's just blades and razors, just the world is not finishing if things are not perfect.
I love that. Yeah, so true. I know we take ourselves so much more seriously than we need to, I feel like.
Absolutely.
People and I've noticed just in my work, people are very forgiving, and unless you're making unless you've got your finger on a nuclear button, there are sometimes rooms for mistakes, right? So
absolutely.
So yeah, that's awesome. The other thing I want to share or ask you is that tell me what you are loving these days. I know we talked about some that you don't have an Amazon list because you guys have just recently got to Amazon. Is that right?
So Amazon just got to the Netherlands about a month or two ago, just before the pandemic. So I haven't had the chance yet to order anything in Amazon. What things I'm loving this day? Well, I'm an avid reader, and I did tell you, we do have an Audible account. So Audible, because it's something online, we do have that. And
I love Audible.
Yeah, right. Like it's just so handy to be able or to listen or to read and then catch up at the same time. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, these days with the quiet periods and everything, I am starting my second 1,500 piece puzzle.
Oh wow, 1,500. That's very impressive.
Yeah, so I'm having a lot of fun with that. It gives me a lot of peace, and I've been also Marie Kondoing my house for the first time. My brother says that I'm late because apparently in the US that was hot a year ago, but I am just loving it.
You're just now getting it and doing the whole like, does it spark joy? That whole thing.
My husband's gonna laugh at me because I'm like, oh, this actually doesn't spark joy. So ciao.
Yeah. It's so interesting because ever since I read that book, you'll find that you will continue Marie Kondoing your whole life and your whole house because now I keep, and I've shared this before with my audience, but now I keep a bag, like a donation bag in my closet.
That is
and
so handy.
Yeah, when I put on, like, I just remember the other day I put something on and I was like, no. And I took it off and I was like, why am I not wearing this? So you go through the whole thing and then you're like, you know what? It's itchy, or I just have never found anything that goes with it.
Yeah.
In the bag it goes.
So recognizable.
In the bag it goes. And it's amazing how much like you just like slough off all of the things that, that you're not wearing. Right? And really and truly, they say, you wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time, which is so true.
But it's so even truer now than ever, right? I feel I have spent the 8 weeks we have been in lockdown with probably 4 outfits because, you wash them and then they're there again. They're the most comfy 8 pieces you have. And then you roll like that. Like we need some people actually.
I know we do. I know. And I always think that when I pack, like when we do a beach trip every year with our family.
Nice.
And I don't let them take very much, or, when they were little, now they pack their own. But I just say, all you need is some bathing suits and a couple of shorts and shirts, and that's it. Really,
right?
You're maybe one dress. And so I've really gotten it down to a science. And even when I traveled so much last year. I think I went out of town once a month.
Wow.
All of 2019. And I'm in that meme that says, I'm so sorry 2019 for what I said about you. Because it was a hard year for me because I was traveling so much, but I got my packing down to a science. So I love you're Marie Kondoing your stuff. We'll have to keep in touch about that.
Absolutely. Happy to.
Anything else? What are you listening to on Audible?
Well, right now I'm on 70% done with Thinking Fast and Slow from Daniel Kahneman. But I have to say recently one of the books that really, really marked me is Invisible Women from Carolina Criado Perez. I don't know
Oh,
if you have read it. If not, I really
no.
recommend it to you and to anybody out there. She's really highlighting the huge gaps in data in gender data. So she's proving
Oh.
that there is a lot of clinical trials, test dummies for cars, a lot of things that get tested on the average human being, which according to science is male, 30 years old, 75 kilos, and 175 meters tall. So they are basically sometimes not desegregating the data between genders. So say they have a
Mm.
clinical trial with 100 individuals, but only 10 are women. And then at the end, they read the results with all mixed results. And actually, when you segregate between male and female, you see that there is other symptoms that are really crucial for women, or you see that there is, so there's so many implications from not having this data being separated or visible that indeed women become invisible, and a lot of them are actually dying from certain drugs and things like that. So very, very interesting book, and definitely a source of inspiration for my next tech venture that I'm about to engage in.
That is fascinating. I'm definitely going to read that. That sounds so interesting. I think you were the one, maybe at one of our conferences, someone was sharing about, or maybe it was someone else sharing about when they invented the hands free faucet. They were using their prototype, they were using white Caucasian hands,
Oh wow, so it wouldn't
not
recognize any
black.
other hands.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it was not recognizing, what, and of course it is a sensor, but they were just not recognizing that. That's a story I heard from someone in
Yeah.
marketing,
But you hear
and
this
so.
often, right? Also with the face recognition, it seems like at the beginning it wouldn't recognize like Asian American features or African American features, and it's just like shocking. And at the end, even those people, everybody's biased, right? And the ones that are developing those kind of technologies, if you are only in your small world, you don't know what you don't know, or you're biased towards what you know only. So that's why it's very, very important to have workforces that are diverse, to have everywhere in your life diversity presence, so that you cannot miss out on those kind of small things that are very important for humanity's
Very important.
lifestyle. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for coming on. This has been so much fun. I've
Thank you,
enjoyed getting to
Corine.
know you. Thank you so much
Absolutely,
for
me too.
sharing, and best wishes to you. I can't
Thank
wait, like I
you.
said, to see what happens in the next 10 years and with your startup, the tech startup that you're talking about. So
Thank you so much,
we'll be
Corine.
watching.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much. And thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks to Melissa for coming on the show today. I want to remind you that I have provided links to those 2 amazing books that she mentioned in the show down in the description box below. You'll see those links. And don't forget, you get 1 free title with your new Audible account when you text Rising Stories to 500 500. This helps us share our podcast with listeners like you. Thanks again for listening, and keep rising in your story.